The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight, two different points of view on how to combat Donald Trump's tariffs. Then, author and educator Irshad Manji gives us her perspective as a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen living in Trump's America. And we took our cameras to meet some of the players in Canada's inaugural pro-women's soccer league. That's all ahead on the agenda. The economic fallout from Donald Trump's tariffs are everywhere to be seen in Ontario, and the political parties are taking various approaches to facing that challenge. We thought we'd bring together two economics watchers and get their takes on some of the ideas out there. And with that, we welcome Armin Yalnizyan, economist and Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers, and Harry Margulies, the author of several books on taxes and has worked on international tax policy at the request of the United Nations. And we are delighted, Armin, to have you here in Toronto for a change. I almost don't recognize you without your record collection behind you. And Harry, on this program for the first time ever, thanks a lot. Good to meet you and good to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me.
I want to start with this, and it's going to, I'm going to take a very open-minded approach to this, and we're just going to power through. Can you imagine, I want to talk tariffs. I want to talk Donald Trump, I want to talk tariffs. Can you imagine that this approach of tariffing the whole world will actually do what the president says it will do, namely reshore jobs into America, restore the $7 trillion in lost value that companies have just experienced over the past couple of weeks, and kind of make America great again? Armin.
Not the way he's doing it. And in fact, generally speaking, no is the answer to your question. But if you had decided that your single purpose was reshoring jobs, putting tariffs up and keeping them there, not putting them there and taking them off and putting them there and taking them off, might have reshored some jobs. It is the uncertainty that has been unleashed that guarantees jobs will not be reshored, the U.S. dollar will continue to fall, stock markets will continue to be volatile, that is a meltdown, and have unexpected surges and melt down again. And more importantly, that the U.S. will be plunged into a recession and bring countries like Canada along for the ride.
Harry, what do you see?
I see that the president is not consistent. On the one hand, he says he puts up tariffs to get trillions of dollars in. On the other hand, he says it's a negotiating tactic. If he manages to negotiate and we will have no tariffs, we're back where we started, without $1 trillion in extra revenue.
Is there a world, though, in which this tariff policy, let's say it becomes more consistent in the days ahead? Let's imagine. Could it work?
Well, I am a free trader to the core. And Armin and I probably differ on this because you're an advocate for workers and I'm an advocate for the consumers. And so free trade does one thing very well. It brings the cheapest product from anywhere in the world to the consumer. It is that has brought us so far in the economic standard. When we change that, we do that at a cost. Every consumer is not a worker, but every worker is a consumer. So if you put up tariffs to protect the worker, it comes at a cost to the consumer and even to the workers who are also consumers.
Armin, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo what Harry said. What is the purpose of tariffs? Is it for reshoring? Is it to raise funds for the tax cuts that he has promised to continue, which would otherwise expire at the end of this year? Is it for negotiating and showing that the U.S. is the power that every country must bend the knee to? Is it about actually destroying a global world order for reasons we cannot yet discern? It is unclear what the goal is of the tariffs. It certainly is not uniquely to reshore jobs because he and his people must admit you cannot reshore jobs in the window he is talking about, keeping tariffs on or negotiating. No firm is going to fold up the tent in one place and try and build a multi-billion-dollar facility in a country where maybe those tariffs are gone in a few months. So it is an extraordinarily unclear goal these tariffs are trying to meet, because it doesn't even meet the tests of paying for the tax cuts. If the tariffs are put on and they stay on, let's say he collects $700 billion this year. If tariffs really work and jobs are reshoring, every year he'll get less money. But those tax cuts he's trying to fund continue to accelerate because there's more and more people that are going to, by just inflation, move into those tax brackets.
So the math doesn't add up.
100% it doesn't add up. Nothing adds up in this story. It's maddening.
Harry, in which case, there's a great debate in the country right now about what our response to these tariffs ought to be, right? Some people think, we've done programs on this, some people think we ought to ignore them. Other people think, dollar for dollar, go get them. Which camp are you in?
I have problems with whatever we do. And the biggest problem I see for Canada is that this happened while there's a campaign for who's going to be prime minister of the country. That in turn meant that both parties have to look really, really strong, and they make responses that may not be adequate or as they should. If you imagine, just for a moment, there are two countries, and I will take the two blocks of products. One is presented by bread, one is represented by shoes. And the terms of trade is 20 loaves of bread for one pair of shoes. They have had this trading for years and years, and everybody's happy. They have the same currency. So suddenly the shoe countries decides, we want to make our own bread. So they put on a 25% tariff on the bread. Should the bread country then respond? And the answer is, if they want to make their own population poorer, they should. And if it wouldn't have been a campaign, political campaign going on, maybe an answer like, we'll give it 90 days, and if we haven't reached an agreement, we may put on tariffs. But it is what it is, and politics intervenes.
That is a nuanced position, and nuance generally doesn't play during election campaigns.
It does not.
Right, getcha. Okay, what do you think our approach ought to be?
Well, they did do a 90-day pause. They said $30 billion in reciprocal tariffs, and we've got 120 in mind, so we're going to add more later on, depending on how you negotiate with us or you don't negotiate with us in good faith. So I think the issue here for me would be fight back, fight hard. The man is a bully, and he blinks. And we have seen that in spades. So I think the response is going to be pain for consumers. That pain is not going to be obviated by any strategy anybody takes. Everything is now a world of pain. Recessions are inevitable. Price hikes are inevitable. Usually you don't have these two things holding hands. Inflation and higher unemployment don't usually hold hands together. But these policies guarantee that people will lose jobs and pay higher prices. And there is no end in sight to it. So fight, fight, fight.
Can I just say about fight, fight, fight? You know, we now have a prime minister who says everything is on the table. And I think it's good to remember we have 1/10 of the U.S. economy. How big is the table?
How big is the table?
Yeah.
Okay. Having said that, you can't in the middle of an election campaign just say, well, we're going to think about this for 30 days and maybe, maybe we won't do anything. Unless you want to lose, right?
I'm just noting reality, and the campaign has come in between, and it's unfortunate. I mean, the UK, for instance, paused for a longer time, not having a campaign going on right now. They have a good majority in the parliament, and there would have been other responses, and I would almost bet you there would have been other responses from the both contenders for winning if there wouldn't have been an election. So I'm not issuing any condemnation of what they said or what they did, and I'm just looking at reality as it is. I don't have to like the reality, but it still is what it is.
Do you think the tariffs are an attempt by Trump to obviate the need to bring in a national sales tax, which of course he would never do? Number one, it might take a lot of political courage, and that's on short supply these days. But could the money coming in from tariffs do for America what a national sales tax would do, but they don't want to do that?
First of all, I don't have any idea what is happening inside of Donald Trump's mind,
Okay.
In 5 minutes from now, let alone what he's done in the past. Secondly, if tariffs are maintained and they achieve the goal he says he wants for reshoring, the revenue you will get from it will fall. So it can't replace a sales tax. Whereas the need for tax cuts to be extended indefinitely, or at least another term, or whatever it is that he's planning to do after their expiry at the end of this year, the need for money to fuel those tax cuts will rise because more people will be in that category. So you've got like these two lines moving in opposite directions. The tariffs are not a replacement for the tax cuts. The tariffs are not, oh, and by the way, they're going to be paying for those tax cuts for the rich people, but it's going to be the poor people that are going to lose their jobs. So they're going to lose revenues in another place as well through income taxes in the coming months, because he has triggered a recession.
Harry, what's your view on whether or not the tariffs can do what a national sales tax might have done?
The answer is no, and several reasons. One, and the most obvious reason, is a national sales tax is on every product, so it's neutral in the economy. This is geared to preventing imports in the belief that it will create more jobs at home. Just on that alone, I read somewhere that an iPhone that cost $1,000 to make in China, with the tariffs would cost $2,000, but it might cost $3,000 to make in the US. So just look at that for a moment and ask yourself, is it going to work? What might work, and I agree with you, this takes political courage and there may be constitutional issues. A VAT, a HST might work.
Value-added tax.
If you have a 25% VAT in the US, would get to close to $1 trillion in income. And that would be neutral, would also take away Trump's complaining about Europeans having VATs and Canada having that, because it's neutral and his isn't. It is directed, and it makes it creates havoc in the economy.
Would you be in favor of a national sales tax, a VAT-type tax in the United States?
It would be much better than this, and it would still be neutral, and it would do what he wants to do, namely bring in that billion. You could use that then to lower taxes for just about most of the lower income earners. They would only pay the VAT. You could also give a check every month to the ones who are poorest off, so they get neutralized, and then it's an easier tax system, much easier.
Armin, what's your view on that?
Well, my view is that the point of raising $1 trillion is not to help the poor. The point is to get the poor to give money to the rich for their tax cuts, and the tax cuts that he's looking to extend beyond the end of 2025 absolutely favors the richest the most, and actually sees the poorest paying more under the existing system that he's trying to protect. So it would be the poor paying 25% on everything that they buy to be able to give the rich tax cuts, plus they get to pay more in income taxes. It's a political no-sell. It might be neutral, but it's not possible.
Well, I think the idea about fairness, and we'll probably come back to that when it comes to Ken, I would like to have a level of fairness as a filter on everything we say. Fairness is predicated on what our beliefs are. So if you are many advocate for workers, I believe that you will find fairness in whatever is needed to get that promoted. It isn't necessarily so that what somebody believes is fairness is best for productivity and is best for the economy. And we may have to solve one problem at a time, but I'm sure we'll get back to that.
We're here right now. Why don't we get into that? What is your concern about what current policy is doing on the issue of fairness, and to whom?
So the richest in America pay almost all the taxes, and the richest have the ability to move their money out of a country, and the same goes for Canada, by the way, and move themselves with the money. So I have a story, and I'd like to tell exaggerated examples that would sort of help explain this. 5 people come to lunch every day. One is extremely well off. There's one below him that is upper middle class, 2 below that are lower middle class, and one that doesn't have a job. They decide, for a long time, I've done this for 3 years now, that the richest pays 50% of the bill, the 2 below him pay 10% each, 20% each, and the one below him pays 10%, and the lowest one pays nothing. So what happens is that the 3 in the bottom, who pay 10 and 10, they decide to take a vote and decide that he should pay 70%, because the ones who are at the bottom and the ones who are next to the bottom, the 2 times 10%, feel that they are not that much better off. And what happens is he stops coming to lunch. And so there is an issue about what will they produce and what can we really do about them. My take is very simply, there are two categories that really don't pay tax in a society, the poorest and the richest. The richest because it's scary when they leave, and the poorest because they don't have anything to pay with.
This is a nice parable about the progressive tax system, but do you agree with his final point, which is if you tax the rich far too much, they eventually get up and stop coming to lunch?
The rich have been saying this since the Second World War. The rich has been saying this for as long as I have been an economist doing fiscal analysis in Canada, which is way too long to discuss. They keep promising that they're going to leave, but they don't. How can we miss them if they don't go, right? So it has been an issue. You are absolutely correct. That is the logic that is presented. You tax us too much and we will go. We tax them too much and they stop coming. That just hasn't been the case because taxes isn't the only thing that keeps somebody in a country. And if the rules of the game are, if you live here, you pay taxes, people are willing to play by the rules because taxes are for corporations or for rich people, fall somewhere around the 7th, 8th, 9th reason to be located in a place. They are important, they're not irrelevant, but they're not the most important things. Now you do raise the important issue that could you actually tax a corporation so much that they choose to leave? Welcome to Donald Trump's tariffs. That is exactly what is going on. And this guy is a free marketeer that loves corporations. He's trying to tax corporations into coming to the United States. They might shut down shop here because it's too expensive to ship to the United States, but they will not arrive in the United States. So I think you got to be really clear why you are doing what you're doing with taxes and what you think you're going to get out of it when you do it.
Harry, are you adequately taking into account the fact that the guy who they now want to have pay 70% of the lunch may really love the company of the people that he's with, and he's prepared to pay the 70% to enjoy their company?
So I am going to go by reality. I have worked as an international tax advisor in Sweden. I have seen billions upon billions upon billions leave for tax reasons and come back now that Sweden is a tax haven for the rich. And I want to add to that it is not so that capital is the enemy of the worker. Productivity comes from giving a lot of capital, investing it for the worker to make more. And one of Canada's biggest problems is if you're advising somebody in Canada, do you want to start a company here? Or do you want to just invest in US dollars and let the Canadian dollar fall and make a gain? It's sort of, there has to be a complete change in what we are doing in this country to be able to withstand the international influence. I have been party to moving people out of Sweden and also moving billionaires back to Sweden. And they have the best of times in Sweden. You wouldn't believe, compared to Canada, how good it is in Sweden.
So what's your advice on billionaires coming to Canada? Would you advise them to do so?
Well, you know, they may have, like Armin says, many other reasons to come here. They do get one good thing. If they come from abroad, they get a step up for all their assets and they don't have to pay tax when they come, other than when they leave again or when they die or when they sell an asset. But apart from that, they can come here and invest their money abroad. They could live in other countries that has much cheaper tax systems for them or much easier to create capital. Let me just take Sweden, for example. I know I'm a bit long now, Armin. You said before you might have been a bit long. Here's what happens. In Sweden, you can put down billions upon billions in a tax-free savings account. You get to pay about 1%, below 1% annually for the privilege. If you, over 10 years, double your money, it's still tax-free, you take it out. You have paid the government a fee every year. The government knows what they're getting. So is that conducive to savings? Yes. Does Sweden have higher productivity than Canada? Yes. Did people leave for tax reasons? Yes. And did they come back for tax reasons? Yes.
Okay, Armin, your turn.
In 2009, January of 2009, in the middle of the global financial crisis, the then Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, passed a piece of legislation and had implemented a tax-free savings account plan that was identical to the tax-free savings account plan that George Bush had tried to pass 3 times in the United States and did not get through because the pushback was it was too generous to rich people. We have had that program in place for, what is that now, 16 years? And the people that benefit the most from it are the ones that have maxed out their registered retirement savings plans, their registered education savings. They've maxed out all their registered savings plans, which means that they don't pay taxes today until they pull the money out of it down the road. And the tax-free savings account has ballooned for people that can sock away their maximum contributions. We have everything that you're talking about. Canada is, in fact, now one of the tax havens, one of the top tax havens in the world. We have lower tax rates than for many things in the United States, including corporations and including the highest paying people. And we tried to introduce capital gains inclusion rates by bumping them up, not because we were asking individuals to pay more in capital gains, but we were asking more corporations that are flippers, that were buying Canadian assets and then flipping them for a capital gain. We were trying to prevent that. And for some reason, anybody raising any taxes right now has become some kind of toxic suggestion, whereas what we are seeing is a galloping acceleration of inequality. So you want to talk about fairness, let's talk instead about inequality, which in and of itself is destabilizing to economic production.
I want to seize on that policy item that you just brought up there, because that has been, it certainly would have been an issue in this campaign had Mark Carney not taken the decision that he took, which was to say the previous Trudeau government, Chrystia Freeland as the finance minister, wanted to increase the inclusion rate of the capital gains tax that the government said would bring in $19 billion to help pay for pharmacare and dentacare and social housing policies and more social programs, etc. The Conservatives opposed it. Mark Carney has now stood down on it. He has said that that increase will not take place. And the Conservatives and Liberals now have the same position on it. Harry, to you first. Which is the correct position? The Trudeau government's original position or the Carney government's current position?
Well, my point is somewhat more complicated and an easy answer to that very complicated question. I'll give you another fable here, and that is about how capital gains and capital gains tax and productivity work together. So I find a seed, I plant it, costs me nothing, I make an apple tree, and the apple tree produces 100 apples a year. And I'm very happy with that. You come along and say, listen, I want to buy your apple tree. And you know that you can produce 200 apples per year. So if you get the tree, you will pay more tax, you will have more income, and have a better contribution to GDP, to gross domestic product, than I will have.
Because I'm doing 200 apples, you're only doing 100.
But what happens is we have raised the tax on capital gains so that when I sell the asset, the tree, I pay 60% in tax. Let's say that it's an exaggerated example.
It sure is.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just making a point. What happens is I will not sell because I'll be left with 400, which gives me 40 apples when I reinvest. Is it fair that I don't sell it? Is it fair that you don't get to produce more for society? And so here is the issue about when you think that you can get fairness as a point. Fairness is in the mind of the beholder. What you advocate for directs what you think is fair. And if you are for free trade, I would say, ask a worker, would he like to be living in a fairer, more equitable society? Yes. Would you mind having 3 trillionaires created as neighbors, but your standard of living doubles? Yes. So it's all what you are asking, and we have proven that capitalism does it. There's an enormous discrepancy between the best off and the poorest off.
But I'm inferring from your parable that you think that Carney's decision to put things back the way they were is the way to go.
It's probably the way to go, and we may even want to go just to prove the point that Canada wants to, because he now says, by the way, Carney, he's into growing Canada, maybe even lowering capital gains tax.
Armin, your view on that?
So I won't use your parable, but I will use your perspective, which is it's a micro perspective. It's one company, it's my neighbor, so on and so forth. This capital gains inclusion rate being raised by a very small amount will have resulted in $19 billion over 5 years. Let's say that is less than 1% of the revenue. Like, it is a very small amount. of the revenue that is going to be needed to deal with aging populations, aging infrastructure, restructuring an economy so it can grow because we needed to unscramble it from the United States. Nobody wants to raise taxes. Cool. But we are going to have absolute demands for, at the macro level, the things we are going to have to do to take care of an aging population, to take care of the smallest working age cohort we have seen since the 1950s, except both mom and dad are working. So who's taking care of the kids? We're going to need more paid for care from cradle to grave. And for people to not get sicker quicker, we're going to need to actually spend more on that. Plus, we are going to be in a period of, yes, we want to grow, but we can't grow with the United States. So how are we going to grow? So we're going to spend, but we can't raise taxes. How are you going to square that math?
Well, are we borrowing money? And I know that is one of your propositions to, do we get to that later on?
We get to that later on.
You said, yeah, okay. This is not easy. and so, no, it's not easy for the following reason. Is every generation going to skip on to the next generation by borrowing money to keep a standard of living we cannot afford? And so we vote in politicians who say to us, we'll buy you off with what we borrow, and our successors will have to take it back from their children and grandchildren.
But she's actually saying we've got to pay our own way more now as opposed to borrowing money.
Why are we cutting taxes when we should probably be raising them? Except for some reason, raising taxes is a goofy idea, and everybody should cut every tax. Cut carbon taxes, cut capital gains taxes, cut personal income taxes, cut fees for this, that, and the other. Like, that's the flavor of the moment, but it is so incredibly myopic. So you don't want to pass a debt on to your kids? Pay more in taxes, Harry.
Okay, that's your view. I'm thinking that if we could do what is most important for Canada is raising productivity and getting out of the mess we are now in because of the USA, which is not as easy as it looks, this could be a lot worse than anybody imagines.
Okay, would you agree that a basic form of productivity is people don't get sick as quickly or get the care that they need when they need it, because we've got to have all hands on deck in an era where you've got the smallest working age population, and to be able to do that you have to actually spend more money. So you talk about productivity as if it's an individual business's problem or an individual sector's problem. It is an all of society problem at the moment.
Exactly.
And if we do not attend to the needs of people to have paid care when they need it, we are going to see flagging productivity. Why don't you join my parade on that one?
Well, I think that the fairness issue may come in the way. You want to protect the worker. I want to see that the consumer gets the best, cheapest products. I don't want to see any customs barriers in any way, because that doesn't bring what we want. And if we can for once decide to grow the economy, whatever it takes, if it takes zero capital gains tax, I would be for that. I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying I would be for anything that brings higher growth to Canada. Right now we're in a position where we don't know where we're going. We have been in Canada for the longest time a subdivision to American, let's say, car manufacture. If the Americans really don't buy our cars, where do we think we're going to send them? Does Korea ever buy our cars, or will Europe? We have a precedent for this. Finland, 1991, Soviet Union collapsed. They lost a big chunk of the export market, and they went through a steel bath. The only place in the world where I ever heard about this was they decided to even discuss what was called an internal devaluation, which meant lowering wages to survive. We are in really dire times. We may never produce a car to be sold anywhere than domestically. There's a lot of capacity in the United States. They could take it there. And we want to mechanize everywhere. In 10 years, nothing of this matters. And productivity, again, is when you use a lot of capital. And Canada needs capital formation to increase productivity. We don't have that. As again I say, if you're rich here in Canada, you place your money in the United States or somewhere else, Canada doesn't benefit.
Right. You gave a hint that we were going to discuss what Armin is referring to as victory bonds, and actually you wrote an op-ed about this a couple of weeks ago in the Toronto Star. Can we bring this picture up now, Sheldon? Those viewers of ours or listeners of a certain age will remember that during World War II, yes, help finish the job by victory bonds. And the public of Canada purchased bonds, in other words, loaned money to the government of Canada to help prosecute and win a war. And you'd like to bring that back now? Do I read that right?
Well, if we can't raise taxes and we need more money, you know, to do the things that we need to do to prevent more economic decline that is absolutely on the menu right now. Today, we are looking at an inevitable recession. The only question is how deep and how long. And depending on who we elect, we will see how deep and how long. But we will need more public spending to disentangle, to unscramble the egg that we have made with the United States, and to be able to deliver the services for an aging population and a shrinking working age cohort that needs help.
What rate of interest would the government have to pay to make these victory bonds desirable?
Yeah, so historically it was a 5% guaranteed rate, tax-free. You could buy an annuity of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. You could buy in as small a denomination as $50. It's a lot of money these days. Children could even buy in the Second World War. They sold stamps, and you could buy one stamp for $25, roughly the equivalent of $5 today. When you bought $4 worth of stamps, you got a $5 bond. That's a tidy 25% return. And it was all done to kind of capture the spirit that we could fight and win. And I have in my lifetime not seen the spirit that is unifying Canada right now in response to Mr. Trump's unprovoked, unfair, talk about unfair, tariff war with us. So if you can't raise taxes, but people want to do more than just buy Canadian, why don't we save Canadian? Our savings rate, yes, our household indebtedness rate is near record highs, but our savings rate in aggregate across the country is at rates last seen in 1996. And people really do want to do more than just buy Canadian. They want to not only save Canadian, they want to save Canada. They want to save our production capacity, our industrial capacity, our capacity to help one another. So why aren't we asking them, would you like a guaranteed return? It might not be 5%. The PBO just put out something last week that
Parliamentary Budget Office.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer was asked by the Green Party, how much would we have to pay citizens if we gave them a 5% guaranteed return paid out annually for a 10-year bond? And the answer was somewhere between $110 and $150 million a year. It's chump change in a revenue. It's chump change in the order
budget
of the government, but it is more expensive than raising the money elsewhere. The question is there a price on raising the patriotism and the feeling that we're doing something together? And wouldn't that help the government that is in charge?
What do you think, Harry?
Well, Armin, you've done a lot of work on this, so I am not going to directly at it. I'm going to go a little indirectly. If we replace the name victory bond by increased government borrowing, suddenly doesn't sound equally good. That's what it is. It's increased government borrowing. And let's then take the equality issue into the place. Who gains most from the tax-free interest? The richest. Who can invest? Not the poorest. Only the ones who have money to spare. So it is choosing one thing, and you want some fairness for the worker, and it also depends, and I don't know the answer to this, what is the money going to be used for? Do we think we're going to save auto workers to do auto work all the time? Or do we really going to use them for restructuring the economy entirely? And that is probably what we need. Now we have an America we cannot trust. We cannot unsee what we have seen. And Russia says they're going to have a bigger presence in the Arctic. And what are we going to do? We are no longer a safe sandwich between Alaska and mainland the USA. So this can come at a much higher cost, become much worse than we have anticipated. And you may be right. I'm just saying everything comes at a cost. I'm just saying.
You know what? I hate to interrupt this because this is going so swimmingly, but we're plumb out of time.
Yeah.
So we have to get you two back because I love the way that you are civilly disagreeing with one another. It makes for a great discussion. Armin Yalnizyan, Harry Margulies, thanks for this, and do come back.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Ever since President Donald Trump put Canada in his crosshairs, anger at the U.S. in this country has been white hot. What's it like to be a Canadian living in enemy territory? Let's get a better understanding of that from Irshad Manji, founder and CEO of Moral Courage and a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen. Great to have you back in the studio.
I know I'm welcome here. I can't always say that for down south.
Well, let's get into this, and let's do a little background first.
Sure.
You are born where?
Uganda,
Came to Canada at what age?
4,
Stayed here how many years?
until around 37, 38,
And have lived in the States for how long?
for 18 years now.
18 years in the States. Do you feel, I know you've got citizenship, but
Yeah.
do you feel American?
What I am is a Canadian without borders. And I say that quite literally. You know, I wherever I go, when people ask me, you know, a little bit about myself, it starts with being Canadian. Now, it doesn't always end there, but I have to say, Steve, these days, waking up in America is a bit of an out-of-body experience.
Meaning?
Well, who'd have thunk that in the land of the free and the home of the supposedly brave, hooded, masked federal agents would be not just permitted, but authorized to pick up an international student and detain her. And of course, that's just one example of so much else that's going on right now. It was a far cry, that scene, from when I first came to the U.S. To teach. And I remember Barack Obama being elected and people basically thinking we've turned the page on the Bush years and everything that makes us ashamed to be American. We've turned the page.
That didn't last that long, did it?
Sure didn't. Exactly.
When people find out, let's say you're at a social gathering or a conference of some kind.
Oh, you think I get invited? That's very kind of you.
Well, yes, I do think you get invited. And people find out about your Canadian background.
Yeah.
And then the subject perhaps turns to Trump. What do people say to you?
Any tips on how to immigrate to Canada?
Really?
Yes, and of course that's a cliche. But I actually think that this time, many more mean it. And it would be ironic, wouldn't it, if Canada had to seal its southern border?
We're going to build a wall.
Right, exactly. But all kidding aside, I really think, and maybe we can get into this later, but I actually think that there are huge opportunities here for Canada. I know that it is natural to live in a defensive crouch right now. Protect. I get that completely. And I think when we have embarked steadily on the road to defending our sovereignty, we can open up a little bit to look at what it will take to recruit paying students from the United States whose families are just disgusted with this administration and want their kids to be educated in a different part of the world.
Well, back in the day, it was always called the brain drain, right? People
That's
leaving
right.
Canada for the States. And now you could call it the brain gain, or you could call it the Trump bump. We hear that.
Yeah.
That we're getting the Trump bump. The reason I ask you the question is that when I talk to Americans, and I do, frequently what they say to me is, I'm so sorry. We're so sorry about what's going on. This is not us. This is just the president. Do you get that? Do you hear
No.
that?
I don't hear that very much. Again, because I work with a lot of universities and K-12 schools, the Republicans whom I have occasion to interact with are younger. And I can honestly tell you that there is a cult of personality with Trump. And so they're not apologetic. What they are is overly faithful in his ability to pull rabbits out of hats. And so there is still very much a clinging to the idea that, Trump knows what he's doing. And in part, but only in part, there is some religiosity behind that. Many young Christians have said to me that, the Bible, or at least their interpretation, their family's interpretation of the Bible, strongly suggests that it will be somebody you would have never imagined coming to save the earth. And so don't look for anybody saintly. If you want to call Trump the devil incarnate, feel free, but he may surprise you about why he's here. So there isn't a whole lot of apology with the ones I encounter. With those who are decidedly not Republican, there is more an anxiety to get the hell out.
Because I've known you for a long time, I think I can say this bluntly. You self-identify as a brown queer woman, right?
No.
No?
No, you're thinking of me from 30 years ago,
that's
Steve.
probably right. Okay.
Oh, man.
So bring me up to date.
I've grown up.
Okay.
A little bit.
How do you, I guess, well, the point I'm trying to get to is here, being you
Yeah.
with the name Irshad Manji in the
Yes.
United States these days,
Yeah.
does that have any issues associated with it?
Almost none. Though I do have a story to tell you. When I was getting my green card, which is not for marijuana growing, it is for working legally in the United States. It's a very long process, and you have to do a ton of paperwork. I got all the paperwork, the pile of it, approved by the State Department. And the very last step, which is supposed to be a formality, was to come to Trudeau Airport in Montreal and literally cross into the United States so that your green card is activated. Well, it didn't turn out to be a formality.
When was this, Irshad?
This was in 2014.
Okay.
And the Immigration and Customs officer who, sort of finger wagged me into his office, told me to sit down, and he said, "You're in trouble." Why? He said, because I am going to be revoking the green card that I will not be giving you in the first place. I said, why? He said he didn't have to answer that question. And I reminded him that I've got all the paperwork. He said he doesn't do paperwork. I said, can I call my immigration lawyer? He said, we don't do lawyers. And then I said, well, everything that you need to see if you're not going to look at the papers is here on my laptop. And as he's looking into his computer screen, he mutters, we don't do computers. What I learned later, after I got an apology from the Customs and Immigration Services, is that he looked up my wiki profile. He saw the word Islam, which of course I've written a couple of books about, and decided I must be a threat to domestic tranquility. Now, Steve, this guy was not white. It's not like his family came over on the Mayflower, okay? But the reason I found out that this is the reason for not even approving my green card is that when I finally got it approved, the officer who worked with me on that said, by the way, I see in your file, that you teach Islam. I said, no, ma'am, I teach leadership. But I've written a couple of books about Islam. And she said, oh, well, it's all over your file that you teach Islam. And I said, Officer Walker, is that my... And she bowed her head and she said, I shouldn't have said anything. Please don't ask me any questions. And there we are. And by the way, it's worth noting, 2014, who was president?
That's pre-Trump. Yeah.
That's Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever worry? You've got a file, right? They know that they do computers, even if they say they don't do computers. Do you ever worry about having difficulty getting back into the United States when you visit Canada?
This will be, when I leave tomorrow for New York, this will be the first time since the tariffs that I'll be re-entering the United States. So I'll call you. You might be the only call that I'm allowed, but you'll be the one.
What is the most different thing about the United States today compared to when you moved there 18 years ago?
Believe it or not, I think many Americans have become Canadian in their insecurity about their identity. You know, when I became a U.S. citizen, and as you pointed out, I'm dual. I will never give up my Canadian passport. The reason I decided to become a U.S. citizen is precisely in anticipation of this moment. I just did not want to give any fodder to the government for deporting me after all of that, rigmarole around my green card, right? When I became a citizen and I told various Americans, oh, now I'm a citizen, almost all of them, including the conservative ones, offered their condolences. When I said to my Canadian friends, I've become a U.S. citizen, they congratulated me. even before now, there seems to be a confidence in who Canadians are that I didn't grow up with, and definitely an insecurity about who Americans are that I didn't sense when I first lived there.
Do you think that partly explains Trump's rise in politics?
I think it partly does, but only partly. I think also there is just a deep, deep distrust of everything institutional in the United States. And I think it starts with all of the lying around the Iraq War. I remember, by the way, and you'll recall at the time, I'd been touring the world with, my first book, The Trouble with Islam Today. Mm-hmm. I would get from time to time really angry emails from service people, American service people, saying, you have no idea what you're talking about. This war is a complete lie. And the more it became established, the lies behind the war, I think the more disillusioned many men in particular, but women too, but mostly men, became, then followed by the collapse of the economy around 2008, 2009, and the lying that went on by the banks, and the fact that Obama didn't prosecute anybody. Nobody went to jail for the massive destruction of household incomes, and that is also again part of the reason that Trump came to power. And then conspiracy theories galore around COVID. All of these major events have just meant that it's not that Americans disagree on major issues. Actually, research shows over and over again that most Americans want the same things. What they disagree about is one another. They don't trust one another. And as a result, they don't bother to engage each other in meaningful ways, which only deepens the distrust and distracts from all the progress that could be made on the issues, including things like renewable energy, socioeconomic equality, immigration, distracts from all of those issues on which there is already a healthy consensus. So the great tragedy here is that Americans are doing this to themselves. And let it be said that we ought not to make the same mistake in this country.
I'm going to ask you an odd final question. Is there anything about the Trump administration you like?
Yes, which is this. I think it is showing how much we've taken for granted over the years. And, every few generations, Steve, I think that large numbers of people need to be reminded of what is worth defending and what is worth preserving.
He's done that, that's
He's
for sure.
definitely done that. And I think that, after this disaster is over, and there will come a day when it's over, another generation will study it and we will remember it. And then a further generation will hear about it, but not necessarily study it. And then the generation after that, should we be, lucky enough to live that long as a species, will have to experience something like this all over again.
Good luck getting back to the States.
Keep that ringer on, would you?
I will do so.
Thank you.
Irshad Manji, author, educator, founder of Moral Courage. Thanks so much for the visit.
It's my pleasure.
Future of Canadian women's soccer players is here.
We hope that we put a product on the field that people in the city will be proud of.
I just hope young fans leave here inspired that oh, I can do this. I can play professional right here at home.
And the way you score, Chloe, is when you come in, you can play this pass first time.
My journey towards becoming the head coach of AFC Toronto was a long one, an interesting one. I was involved in various levels of the game here in Ontario. I was with youth clubs. I worked at TMU University as well, and most recently I was involved with League One Ontario. Choosing this roster was a very complicated process. It's something that took place over months and months. We started with a clear idea of how we wanted to play. And based on that, we built positional profiles for each position. And then based on that, we started recruiting. looking at players domestically first and Canadian players and then internationally as well.
Throughout my career, in between every summer, I'd play League One Ontario, which I think is what kind of connected me to AFC Toronto. I came into contact with them like kind of unexpectedly, just them reaching out when they could to see if I'd be wanting to take an opportunity to play here at home. And for me, that was just an easy answer of yes. I've always wanted to play professional soccer, but to be right here at home in my community is like something that I've like always dreamed of. I coach a lot in Aurora and now just like in Toronto in general. So to be able to have those young girls come out to watch me like achieve my dream of, because they have the same aspirations, is like what really why I chose here.
I'm born and raised in Toronto. I grew up in the East End playing soccer at Leaside, and then I moved to North Toronto where I was there for many, many years, and they've always pushed me up the ranks, allowed me to play up and allowed me to show my talents, which then led me to go to UBC. I was there for 2 years where we won back-to-back national championships. I love the city of Toronto and I love playing soccer there my whole life, and it's just nice to be home with my family.
Coming back to play in my home province means like everything to me, because growing up I thought I'd have to move away to play professional soccer, so like I prepared myself for that, moved away for college, went to the U.S. just because I thought it's going to prepare me best to be away from my family and friends and eventually either have to go to the United States or Europe. But being able to like come back here is just something I never thought I would get that chance to do. I have like visions and dreams all the time of just like that first like home opener and like seeing my family in the stands, and then like of course like just as the season goes on, like having people I know just be in the stands here at York Lions Stadium. And I think for me like that's just like I've always dreamt of that.
Since I was a kid, I probably didn't really picture playing professional because it wasn't a big thing. Like women's pro sports wasn't huge. And so I think it's so important now that it's coming up, and I think it's important to be a part of it and show young girls like me who didn't see that they can now see that in their future.
There's a lot of responsibility when it comes to creating a product that's going to excite the fans, hopefully inspire future generations of girls that are in this city and in this country. So I feel we have a lot of responsibility because it's an opening. It's a first year, and then we're actually involved in something very, very special here.
AFC Toronto, in comparison to a lot of other like teams and just pro leagues in general, like we really are community based, and it's beyond just us playing on the field. It's like how can we connect the community to soccer and sport.
One of our core values is happiness and joy, and once we hope that it's felt every day when we come to the facility, and we really enjoy being here. And I'm very passionate about individual development of each player. My main goal is obviously for us to win, but also that players leave this place better players and better people.
The passion and the love for soccer brings us together. Like everyone on my team, I know they want to win and they just love to play. They want to push each other to be better every day.
Each of us just have such a competitive drive to us to like compete and win. And like that shows in our practices. Like I've been on teams where maybe not everyone's there willing to put their 100% in. And I think for us, like everybody is just here to like do their job and like do whatever it takes to like come together.
Marco's coaching style is very competitive and very team-like. Like I feel like every time he coaches us, it's always moving as a team and connecting and communicating and just being competitive, wanting to step on the ball, wanting to put pressure, just wanting to be quick and fast and like just kind of be ahead of the game, really.
The quality that he demands and the level of play he demands is something I really respect. Because it just creates an overall good environment for us to excel in.
If this is on, you play it all day. If it's on, keep playing, okay? Just make sure you connect. You understand? Your actions need to be explosive, 100%.
The coaching staff and Marco in general do a really good job of like pushing us when we need to be and being hard on us, whereas like giving us that praise when we really do deserve it. So I think you can put a lot of trust into a coach when they can be honest and truthful with you and not just kind of maybe just feed you all the good stuff all the time.
Really be aware of your first step. Yes, that's the only reason we're doing it.
I want my players to remember me as someone who really cared about them first, as people, and then obviously someone who helped them on field and with their game. Being part of this inaugural season is is something very special. When TFC first came around, it was such an inspiration for the boys in this city and in the country. And I hope we can do the same for the girls and really be that example that you can play professional soccer in your own country, in your own city.
April 19th is our home opener at BMO Field at 4 p.m. It's going to be just incredible atmosphere. I know all the Toronto fans are coming out, and I'm just really excited.
I remember when I first signed and know, okay, the home opener is going to be a big deal. But I just think as like the weeks have gone on and like again the team has come together, the more excited I am just to start and like be able to like have that community around us and just get going and be able to like put on a performance and have people want to keep coming out to our games.
I think this league should have happened a long time ago, but it's never too late. The Men's World Cup is also coming up, and it's a really exciting time for the game in North America. And I think the timing, although it's a bit late, it's also the right time in a way because there's so much excitement about the game.
Good action, good.
I think everyone's starting to realize that women's sports is legit and that we are as competitive as men and as hungry as men and as talented as men.
Time your movement, explosive, explosive, here we go.
We're not just here to kind of run a league or a team, a professional team, just like how other teams have done it. We're here to make something different and do something within our community.
Here we go, here we go. Good.
I would like to see more players, especially like in my community, play at the professional level here in this league. So I just hope like young fans leave here inspired that like, oh, I can do this. I can play professional right here at home. This is just going to be the start of history.
Good strike.
And that is the agenda for Monday, April 14th, 2025. Tomorrow on the program, we'll learn how Greenland is reckoning with Donald Trump's threat to take over that island. Hope you'll join us for that. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.